Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Jim Ewing with Provision Solutions. We've enjoyed sharing insights, inspiration, and informative updates through our Marketplace Ministries events. Whether in person or virtual, there's been a wealth of great resources provided. Details are provided in the comments below, along with information on staying informed of upcoming events and interacting with others online. We trust you'll enjoy the segment and invite you to be a part of our Marketplace Ministries Network. We'd love to have you as part of our collaborative Christian community. Thanks. And now, here's our presentation. So ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us here. Jim Ewing with Provision Solutions and our Marketplace Ministries Network. Over the years, I've had opportunity to meet a number of wonderful people, followers of Jesus Christ, who are out there serving the Lord in the places where He has them. Today, it's my pleasure to have with us Keith Knight. And Keith and I have known each other for a number of years. I've really appreciated his heart for looking after the needs of those who are growing their businesses and trying to serve the Lord. So Keith, thank you so much. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself to help them understand some of the stuff I know about you?
Wonderful, Jim. Thank you. It's good to be here as well with you, with the network as well. After a long career in journalism, actually about 25 years as editor of newspapers across Ontario, and also as the director of communication with the Presbyterian Church in Canada, I was invited to take over a very small organization called the Canadian Christian Business Federation, which began about 30 odd years ago in Ontario. When I took over 15 years ago, there were 7 local groups that met across Ontario. After 10 years of doing that work with them, having monthly breakfast meetings, we have at the end of that time 65 chapters across the country meeting monthly, and it was really heartwarming so to see Christian men and women involved in business, either seasoned professionals or young guys who are just starting out, to come together once a month to really connect their Sunday faith with their Monday work. And that's really what it's all about, too. So we began that work. I did that for 10 years, and then I felt the need to step down from that and to also bring that on to others to step in place and to move it forward. So as I was leaving, I said, Lord, what's next for me? I had no desire at all to retire or anything. So at that point, Mark Kraft from Nelson Kraft and Associates, they're based in Abbotsford, BC, approached me and said, given your network of connections within the business community across the country, about 6,500 business leaders who are currently part of my network, then too, they asked me to consider to work with them also as an associate. So I've been doing this work now for the past 4 years, working from home in Hamilton, Ontario. We have about 10 colleagues altogether across the country, 10 associates. We have regular monthly, weekly breakfast meetings, actually, where we get together and we just connect and see what's going on with our various searches that we're involved in. So I've been involved in conducting about 30 or 40 searches every year among Christian nonprofits. And then in October or in April of this year, I was asked by Nelson Kraft to focus solely on Christian business owners. So it's really, since then, it's been working with the Christian business owners to help them grow their business, to also help them discern how to help them grow their business, what's important for them. And it sort of began that way. And I've been involved in regular weekly connections with business owners and young entrepreneurs also ever since then.
Yeah. Prior to this time together here, we were exchanging some information, and I was really thinking that you'd have some great insights for our Marketplace Ministries Network around the topic of organizing and reducing risks. Now, risks are all around us, whether we're starting up or whether we're growing a business or whether it's a mature organization that we have, and now we're looking to pass on the leadership to the next generation. There's risk all around us. But Keith, what are some of the challenges that you've seen that need to be faced by a growing venture, whether it's a business or whether it's an organization of some sort?
Well, that's interesting because I just finished working with, so actually still am working with a business owner who bought a business about a year or so ago. He currently has, he's a manufacturer. He currently has 50 employees. His leadership team of seven men and women altogether too doing that stuff. And he went through a process of developing strategic plans and so on, and he had all the goals nailed down for the next 5 years. He had a leadership team of people who he insisted had to be Christian leaders who shared his values. That was very important for him, and it's very important for any organization to have the same thing, to have a leadership team of people who share your values. He also had 50 employees who sort of drove trucks and provided the services for this manufacturing company, and those were lower paid employees, not necessarily Christian. In fact, most of them were not Christian. As a result of what happened, though, and just within the past few months, actually, he said, "I've got a problem, Keith." He said, "My employees are disgruntled and dissatisfied. They want more money. They want to unionize." So, well, that's very interesting. I mean, he never saw that coming. He assumed that he would just uh, develop his company. He would have a leadership team of five fellow Christians there who would just run the show and carry on and just grow the organization as they had planned to, and so on. But he's suddenly now faced with employees who were disgruntled and so on. So he's going through that process. So the number one thing for me always has been with any company, whether it's to start out, value your employees and to also make sure that they have a strong sense of purpose and a strong sense of belonging also. And that's really, really important too. There's nothing worse than having an employee saying, I don't know why I'm here. I don't really feel as though I'm valued or whatever. So that's an important part of that stuff. So as a Christian employer, certainly you need to have the right people in place at the right time. I recall, Jim, very, very clearly a few years ago, attending a conference in Vancouver where the CEO of Logos Bible spoke. He had a workshop, and his title of his workshop was, "Have you fired someone today?" And his notion was, and he mentioned this employee that he had, somebody who he was a Christian guy, and he just didn't fit in certain departments. So he was moved around, over the next year to various different departments within the organization as well. And wherever he worked, he did not feel satisfied at all too. And other employees around him were looking at him and sort of saying, "You don't really belong here in that sense." So finally, after about a year, um, he finally said, "All right, I'm sorry it's not working out. You really need to be fired. You have to go, let go." And the next day, that woman's or that man's wife called him and said, "Thank you so much for firing my husband. He's been miserable for the past several years," and so on. And about a year later, he enrolled in seminary and became a minister. So it's putting the wrong person in the wrong location and so on. So, do no one a favor by moving people around, saying, "Well, I'm a compassionate guy, so I'll find some way somewhere in my organization to fill in for you." But it's really important to find the right people and the right mix in the right organization with the right talents to move forward.
That absolutely fits with the next thing I wanted to ask you, Keith, and that is the responsibility of the leaders of the organization, presumably the owners, but it could be management, to care for the organization and look after the needs of the customers on one side of things and the employees on the other. And sometimes helping someone in their career path to find a better place for them where they are a fit, maybe that is the best decision for the leadership of the organization. So, do you have any other thoughts about caring for the organization, customers, and its people?
In terms of customers, of course, that varies really from company to company in terms of who your clients are. But I think it's also important to be discerning also as to who your customers are going to be in terms of values and so on. And that, of course, varies on your organization or on what you're producing as well in that sense. But I mean, my primary focus has been on finding employees and that. I recall clearly also there's a car dealership in Toronto area, the GTA area, owned by a Christian man, and he approached us. He said, "I've got a great team here, but I really need to have a Christian controller work with me to share my values and so on. So we did that. We found someone who shared his values, but it was someone who said, the final candidate actually, who was the best candidate completely, said, I don't really want to move to Toronto. It's not at all appealing to me at all in that sense. But he did drive down and met with the owner. The owner, they said, I really want you to work here as well and so on too. So he offered him $20,000 a year more for his salary. He offered to move him. And he said, I'll also make you a partner in my company as well.
So, do you have some thoughts with respect to managing the organization? And of course, it's great to have this organization that you've set up and grown over a period of time, but all of it needs to be managed. And the larger the organization gets, the more challenging that management role can become, often beyond the abilities of the original founder of the organization. So, do you have some thoughts for us, Keith, on effectively managing a growing organization?
We're dealing with a couple of companies right now too that were initially sort of family owned and run companies, and they've grown incredibly. They're currently national. They have multi-millions in sales and so on. So they've intentionally moved forward. They initially, of course, were family-run organization, but they then brought in other people as well too, who are well qualified. So it was beyond their family. They're now looking at creating a board of directors for the company, and to also, since it's so well run and so on, well known, that they want to actually make it an employee owned company. So they're prepared to provide shares also for the company, and that's an important part also of acknowledging, that the company, it's bigger than me, it's bigger than my family, right? And that's an important part of that as well. It's sort of moving the things forward that way. So it's always important to have a leadership team that shares your values. I think that's foundational, no matter what it is, and to move them forward. But then to also work to scale as well, to also have a very vibrant HR department, for instance, and to be able to grow your employees and to also provide the benefits that employees need too, and so on. So it's really scaling everything up to make it much more of a corporate thing, and that's really important.
Leadership is an important component to the success of a potential business or an existing business to take it forward into whatever the Lord would have in front of them. So, with that as our target audience, Keith, followers of Jesus Christ, leading as Jesus would lead an organization. That can be a little bit of a challenge in a world that's kind of full of obstacles, landmines, and all sorts of challenges to our position with respect to being a follower of Jesus Christ and interacting with all of the stakeholders that would be around us. What are your thoughts on this? Leading as Jesus leads.
That's foundational also. That's really very important as well, Jim. I recall clearly having a conversation, a few years ago now, with a manufacturer, a man who owned a large company as well. He had about 200 employees on his factory floor and that. So he kept saying to me, he said, ours is a Christian company. I said, so what's that mean to you? He said, of course, first of all, I and my leadership team, we're Christians. He says, secondly, what we do is every Monday morning, we bring in a local pastor, and he provides a sort of meditation at 8 a.m. So all of our employees are all involved there on the factory floor. We do a meditation, we begin our week with prayer and with focusing on God. He said, and then he said, after that's done, the pastor will walk through the factory floor actually, and he'll speak to each individual person and offer a prayer with them as well too. So he'll know the organization that's involved there, the people involved there. He'll ask them, how's your wife doing with her cancer and so on. And so he does that on a regular basis. He said every Wednesday at noon, we offer the Alpha program, and that's volunteers. Anybody who wants to join that group as well. He said we have some employees who are not Christians and so on who want to come there too. So he said and that's an important part also of us providing sort of a Christian atmosphere for them. And of course, aside from that, I know him personally as well. He gives away a lot of money to kingdom causes and supports a lot of ministries and missionaries. He also supports his own employees who want to go away on a mission trip overseas somewhere, for instance. So he'll cover their cost and pay their salary also while he's there. So this is really, in my mind, the epitome of what a kingdom business could look like. It's someone who cares for his employees, someone who cares for God's kingdom, who provides financially for them, but also creates an atmosphere where you also learn, that process too, and learn what it means to be a Christ follower in that area. So yeah, very helpful. He's been kind of a model for me as well as I meet with other business owners when they ask, what's it mean to be a Christian company? I said, well, this is what one guy is doing. They said, well, there's some good ideas there as well. So more and more of them are doing that as well. Bringing in, I mean, some also actually larger companies hire a chaplain who's there a certain number of days a week as well, for instance, to provide that kind of support to their employees.
Those are great points that you've raised, Keith. And I'm going to maybe just dwell on this a little bit longer. And do you have some other suggestions that you have observed from your contact with other Christian businesses and organizations that would be baby steps towards representing Jesus Christ well to their stakeholder group?
Again, it gets back, Jim, I think, to just providing for your employees and so on, to really pay them well, to provide benefits also for them, and but also to be sensitive to what the employees need. So we often sort of have a benefits package for employees, for instance, but I think having a benefits package or something that is sort of geared to employee needs is really important too. You may see someone there, for instance, who needs a paternity leave or maternity leave, for instance, or who has some issues at home with health, where you have a flexible schedule also for them to work in, for instance, where they can come in a bit later, leave a bit later, for instance. So I think being more mindful of individual needs, especially if you have a valuable employee there who really does a lot of important work, whether it's HR or finance or whatever, and again, ever since COVID hit as well, we increasingly have this whole notion of just of hybrid models of working remotely, for instance, or maybe spending a day or two in the office and so on. So that's really the new way of doing things as well. So if you can do your work and be an employee and still work from home now and then, that's really important too. I do know of a couple of companies actually as well that are doing the reverse now for us after COVID. A lot of people were just forced to stay home as well. But then a few people were reluctant to come back. So what's happened now also is that some companies are actually paying employees to come back into the office, and they're saying, "We'll pay you mileage. We'll buy your lunch." So that's a whole new way again too. So to lure them back into the office again.
As you've been sharing that, Keith, I was just thinking of this visual image of the shepherd looking after the sheep. And again, we might think of the owner or the leader of an organization as being the shepherd of that flock that they have charge over. And then just being aware of the condition of the flock and the individualities, the personalities, the individual needs that each sheep or each employee might have, and being sensitive to that, being flexible to it. So those are some great suggestions. Growing. A growing organization is probably going to be feeling some growing pains. And as an organization scales up its capacity, often additional talent is needed to come on board. Now, this is an area that you operate in. Do you want to talk just a little bit about meeting those growing pains and overcoming them through the right combination of talent?
Yeah, and that's really important too, and that's really why a lot of companies, also nonprofits, come to us and say, we really want to have Christian employees as well, and so on. So we often work with companies to provide strategic planning, for instance, or those issues, so to see what their needs are, what their growth plans are. In the case also of one company, they came to us and said, all right, we're looking at probably 4 new employees. We want an HR development person. We also want a business development person, and then we need 2 salespeople as well, to work along that side too. So we sort of determined what the primary need was, first of all. And he said, all right, you need to have an HR person in place because of your number of employees there and so on. So we found a good Christian woman actually who filled that need. We also need a business development person, someone who has a strong sense of business and of growth and of maybe fundraising, for instance, or accounting and business. Again, as part of our work too at Nelson Craft and Associates, we have what we call our treasure chest. It's not a database; it's a treasure chest of thousands of qualified men and women currently in their fields. Some are looking and some are not looking at all. Some are sort of saying, "Well, if something appropriate comes along, just let me know." So, but I regularly meet with individuals. We initially do about a half hour or an hour interview with them as well when we have the resume. And I invariably ask them, please send me your resume, but also a cover letter as to what your ideal job looks like. When we come to a company, we'll give them our top 5 to 8 candidates, for instance, for that certain position, and say, here are the best qualified people that we have with resumes. We've spoken to each one of them for an hour or two. So we want you to, out of these 5 to 8, we want you to pick 2 to 4 that you want to move forward again for a second interview. So they'll pick the 2 to 4, and then we'll also facilitate that discussion with them right down to the final one as well. So we have that ongoing database that we use to place people wherever they are. And that's really important.
Well, Keith, it's been great to catch up with you here. I just want to give you one last opportunity for some closing thoughts that you might want to share with our audience. Maybe those that are starting out, just beginning the journey that is ahead of them, or perhaps for those who are continuing the journey that the Lord may have them on in the venture that they have. Closing thoughts from you?
Sure, thank you, Jim. It's been delightful as well to meet with you too. Again, in terms of ongoing work, whether you're starting out, or whether you're a seasoned veteran, it's still a matter of having a team around you of qualified people who share your vision and your values and so on. If you're a one-person entrepreneur, find somebody else again to sort of bounce ideas off of, and that's really important too. When it comes to someone like Jim to help for that process, that's also what it's all about too. So it's really, we do a lot of consulting. Also, we do a lot of sort of life plan workshops too with individuals who are looking for long-term goal setting as well. But again, it's foundational for me. It's all about the people, and it's finding employees who are qualified, but also reward them well. That's also, I think, a matter of stewardship too. Our best gift that we receive from God are employees to work with us, qualified employees, and especially those who share our vision for God's kingdom in that way. And that's really important for us too. It's I pray each day, and also with the employees too, God's kingdom come, God's will be done, and that's what it's all about.
Well, Keith, thank you very much. And I wasn't anticipating that little plug there, but thank you very much. We have a lot of people within our own network that are very qualified and can be of assistance to those that are on the journey that God has in front of them. And I appreciate the role that you have as well. So again, I would encourage our members, if this is a right fit for you, check out Keith Knight with Nelson Craft and Associates, and I'm sure that they can be of some assistance to you with your talent requirements. So Keith, thank you so much. God bless you in the journey that is yet ahead.
Thanks so much, Jim.
Thanks for being with us. We trust you found this to be helpful. And if so, please give us a like, a follow, and a share. The Bible says in Matthew, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." If you're launching or growing a business, a ministry area, or a special project, or if you're involved in helping them as a resource or service provider, we'd love to have you participate with us. Stay informed of upcoming events and items of interest by subscribing to the Marketplace Ministries Update, sent out periodically. May God bless you as you do your best to faithfully represent Jesus Christ in the marketplaces of life.